Right, let's try this again. We are kicking off part 2 of NBA free agency. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we are back. And Jack is still as excited as he was before, right, Jack?
Nothing is going to take away this excitement. Not a pandemic. Heck, if Donald Trump was in the White House right now, I'd be equally as excited. He still is in the White House. Shit, I should probably not say that. But
and he's doing everything he can not to leave. Oh, God.
Hey. Don't. I'm still buzzing right now, man.
Okay.
You know, Brooklyn buzzing. Nets buzzing. Joe Harris buzzing. Repeat myself. Out of the league. Cleveland didn't want him. Orlando didn't want him. Brooklyn wanted him. Joe Tsai wanted him. Sean Marks wanted him. Jac Manuell wanted him.
Maybe too much.
Maybe not. The headband. The shaggy hair. The gorgeous beard, the shooting, the damn celebration. $75 million later, Joe Harris is earning every single cent of it. He built himself up from a castaway, a nobody, to being a $75 million player, and he deserves all of it. Every dollar, every cent. He's earned it, built himself up to be one of the best shooters in the NBA, one of the quality rotation players. Every other team would kill to have Joe Harris, even on that contract. It's an elevated pay. Davis Bertan's got his money, but who gives a shit about the Washington Wizards when the Brooklyn Nets retain the most gorgeous specimen to enter this earth? I've lived for 30 years on planet Earth. 30 years in about 15 days. I've had many happier days. Podcasting with you two, it's been awesome. The friendships, the podcast, the episodes, the moments. I don't think, reflecting back on my 3 or 4 years with OTG, that I felt as elated, as ecstatic. I can't think of any more synonyms. Because Joe Harris is a Brooklyn Net. And he's going to be a Brooklyn Net for a very long time. I got no words. I got no more words.
Kory, give us some analysis on this deal, please.
That was honestly kind of beautiful. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I hope he's giving you some money for how much you ride and die for this man. It was a must-make move by the Brooklyn Nets. You had to keep Joe Harris for how important he is to this offense, how important he is to this team. The Brooklyn Nets are in win-now mode with their cap situation. We're going to be able to get much more else. They're not going to be able to get much. We're going to be able to get much else on the market.
It's late. We've had a long night. Okay.
Yeah. But Joe Harris is coming back to Brooklyn. Nick, you're the Nets guy as well. What are some of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, happy to have Joe Harris back, like you said. Given the Nets cap situation, as long as they have KD and Kyrie, they're not going to have cap space. So retaining Joe was a must. They weren't going to be able to bring in much more talent. Obviously, they have trade avenues, but free agency, they're pretty locked up. And like Jack said, the contract, maybe a tad of an overpay, but Joe Harris had leverage on the Nets, and it was a situation where every other team in the league would love to have Joe Harris on their team because he's literally a perfect role player. Great three-point shooter, can attack the rim a little bit.
Great three-point shooter.
Can obviously attack the rim a little bit, improved as a passer, gives you effort defensively. Never going to be a lockdown guy, but can play in the system. So you're happy about it and everything that he can do. And Kory, what do we got?
John Wall wants out of Washington.
What?
Wow.
Wait,
I thought that John. I thought that.
Here we go. You ready? So
Yeah.
Rockets and Wizards talks on Russell Westbrook for John Wall stall. Wall has made it clear he wants a trade out of Washington to happen.
Oh my God!
Weren't reports coming out earlier this week that
opened Pandora's box?
That Washington didn't want John Wall anymore because he was storing up gang signs in a scrimmage or something, right? Didn't we just talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I chatted about that on JBT with my guy, the only Australian Washington Wizards fan, Nick.
At least we got some news to think about tonight or today.
Oh, man, we're literally potting today, and Wizards woes will not be exempt. The reason why he is a Washington Wizards fan is because of John Wall. He doesn't go for that team without John Wall. It's going to be
the interesting thing is with John Wall, what happens with Bradley Beal? Like if John Wall's there, like Bradley Beal becomes an option on the market. Now the Rockets' leverage with James Harden just got a little bit less, so I think that's a move that you have to think about. At least if the front office in Washington is really thinking, and this is a move they're going to make, unless they want to pair Westbrook and Beal, I guess you could talk yourself into it. I guess if you're willing to talk yourself into Wall and Beal, you talk yourself into Westbrook and Beal, but still, something to think about. And I mean, James Harden doesn't want to play with John Wall.
I was about to say that my happiness is peaking, and will never peak higher than this. My guy Nick Busing is probably down here right now. He's thankfully not on Twitter as much as us. I'm not going to message him.
I mean, at least he got his guy back, Davis Bertans. Like, that's something. We can talk about that. 5 years, $80 million. He got paid.
Latvian Laser, one of the.
I like that.
We had one of him in our top 10, I believe, on our free agency list, and obviously as a power forward who can shoot as well as anyone on the move, off the dribble, over
Fantastic.
So many guys. And at NBA Asians, Wall and Christian Wood, dream team in Houston. Great content from everyone. Crimson Striker, they really might have to deal for Westbrook now. Lol. Do we think now that this, Kory, do you think this solidifies a Westbrook for Wall trade? Do you think that obviously it's more likely?
I don't know. I mean, again, the tweet by Shams said the talks have stalled, but it doesn't change the fact that Wall wants out. I mean, it makes the most sense, I guess, if you can't get Westbrook out of Houston for much else. At least you're getting in a serviceable point guard, not even a serviceable, maybe even a better point guard in John Wall. Possibly, we do know that John Wall's a better shooter, not the same rebounder, but, was a good defender. Obviously, with all the leg injuries, we don't know what John Wall looks like. We haven't seen John Wall play in, 2.5 years?
Yeah.
So it's really tough to gauge on the John Wall front of what kind of player he looks like. But obviously, looking at salaries and how many teams can actually match up of some sort of deal to get John Wall, there's not that many teams out there. The Knicks are one, but do they have the assets? I don't
think you even
right
need
now.
Assets.
What do you say?
I said you don't need assets. You don't need assets to acquire John Wall or Westbrook, at least in my opinion. I think it's more of matching the numbers, or the Knicks still have cap space because they haven't signed anybody really yet. I mean, they signed Alec Burks, for $6 million? So there's still plenty of cap space. I think they still have 29, and they could probably open up more.
Who would you guys rather have? Kory, I'll jump to you first. Westbrook or Wall? It's like, what would you rather have, shit pudding or pea soup?
I don't know if this is a shock, but I'd rather have Westbrook, at least right now, because I don't know what John Wall is. It's hard for me to trade for something I don't know. Like it's like you give me two presents. One box is open and I know what's in it. The other box I don't know. Like I'm gonna take the one
and the box that's open is an average gift. It's not something that you necessarily want, but there is some mystery with the other one. So I mean, if you're Houston, the idea of John Wall is a little enticing because you know that probably Westbrook's not going to work out. I think, like Kory said, Westbrook right now, we know that he's still a good player. His fit is the problem, and his contract is the problem. Like, he still gives you some on-court production in the right system in the right situation. John Wall, we have no idea if he can still play at an NBA level, and that's not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. He's just suffered a ton of major injuries, and he's a guy that kind of, played off of his explosiveness, and now he's not going to have that at the same level that he had it at one time.
On top of the fact of with the Rockets, another deal. I feel like every team we talk about is going to have a deal associated with it. So the Rockets also signed Christian Wood to 3 years, $41 million.
After the deal it didn't close out, and then it came back.
Right, exactly. Which is the second person to do this tonight. Dwight Howard being another guy we'll talk about, in a few minutes or whenever down the road. But Wall and Westbrook, both those guys would benefit a guy like Christian Wood regardless, which is a benefit if you're Houston at least.
Yeah, Christian Wood, I mean, that's a great signing. Sorry to cut you off, Jack. That's a great signing for them, especially at the MLE. Like, he's a guy that even if they do trade James Harden, that's a nice piece to have. Like, that's a young player that showed some promise. He's not fully developed. He could be a guy that you still have if James Harden and Westbrook are there that gives you a different element you didn't probably have the last few seasons.
At the Sean Gross, Westbrook's teams thrive when he attempts 2 to 3 threes a game. We've heard that he wants to be the guy again, OKC version of Russell Westbrook. I don't know where that's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to happen for John Wall either. The only thing that makes sense to me right now is a direct trade for both of them. Just, it's just like, all right, you guys have this guy, you guys have that guy, just to change it for the sake of it. I can't see, we can go through literally all 30 teams right now. They are the 2 worst contracts in the NBA. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, there's some other ones you take into consideration. I had it in front of me, but the third year of both those contracts is $47 million, which at that point is going to be the worst number in the league.
It's gargantuanly outrageous. Like, it makes little to no sense. If one of them was a center... Actually, Russell Westbrook plays like a center. Maybe the Detroit Pistons...
Just no defense.
I mean, I got no idea. Like, we just reflecting upon like part one of this, we're like, oh man, we're just like scraping for news. I got like half a page of like dot points here of like, all right, here's the guys we can discuss a little bit. Let's try and like get some chatter. Now I've got like 2 pages.
And moves keep coming.
And it doesn't stop. Like, Kory with the John Wall news has my brain exploding. I don't know if I have a brain anymore. I feel like I'm out of my body after the Joe Harris news, and I've sort of in a multiverse of happiness, and it is a utopia that I don't think I'm going to be able to go back to what planet Earth is, and the semblance of reality. I don't want to go to sleep. I know it's only 2:39 p.m. here in Melbourne, Australia, and it's like 10:30 for you guys out on the East Coast, and you guys are warriors, absolute goddamn.
I'm energized right now.
I'm hoping I'm bringing it for you guys. I'm trying to.
Second wins.
I love free agency and just the amount of moves we saw. Like, my wife was watching me on the couch and she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm just like, "Yo, shit's getting crazy right now." When Jeremy Grant signed that deal with Detroit, 3 years, $60 million, I was like, "My God, that is obviously an overpay." I expected him to get something in the mid-level exception range. That was something that was being reported, and maybe he was retained by Denver for like 12 or 13, maybe 15, but he got 3 years, $60 million. I know that's a guy that we all kind of like, but what were your thoughts when you saw that number?
I thought, wow.
That's
what
I reacted.
Grant. I thought, wow I was like, my initial reaction was wow. Then it was good for Jeremy Grant, and then it was like Pistons. Then it was like, damn, that's a waste of Jeremy Grant's skill set.
Yeah.
Like those are the 4 emotions I went through with Jeremy. Because again, the Pistons have been one of the most confusing teams tonight with some of their moves. It may be signaling that they're going to be maybe a Blake Griffin sign and trade, possibly, or some sort of Blake Griffin trade at some point tonight with how they've been operating. It's been really weird. In a really weak free agency class, this might be one of the most wild free agencies.
We didn't even talk about Montrezl Harrell yet, but Jack,
we
about
had
Detroit.
Crimson Strikers in the chat right now, so we're going to talk about Harrell. Should we just try and do some pinch hitters and then,
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about the Pistons before I lose the point. It's mad funny is they just traded Luke Kennard because, I don't know if I was talking to you with this, Jack or Kory. He's a good role player, and they're going to be a bad team. So it doesn't make sense to have a good role player and a bad team. But they literally just signed Jeremy Grant, who's a good role player, to be in a bad team for $20 million a year for the next 3 seasons. But, Jack, let's talk Lakers.
So, okay, I will give you the background of how I arrived at this news. Our group chat's going crazy tonight. Shout out to everyone at OGG Basketball. We love you all with all of our hearts. Not as much as Joe Harris. But I was going for a walk because I've been sitting down for so long on my computer and on my phone. And I'm having a drink of water. I get the notification, and Kory's dropped like, oh, Shams has made the announcement. I'm like, oh, Los Angeles. Oh, yeah, Harrell's sticking around. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Kory's like a bit hype here. Like, this is weird. Lakers? Kory, what were your thoughts when you dropped that in the chat?
I thought it was a typo. I was like, this is a typo, right? Like he meant Clippers. He didn't mean Lakers, right? And then you wait, and it's just like, no. This is what's happening. He's going across the hallway.
I thought Kory was having issues typing, honestly, when he kept putting typo.
I couldn't get my thoughts out fast enough, but I wanted to share the news. I wanted to beat everybody to the group chat, because I will say, the OTG group chat, to anyone in here, you guys are great. You guys are really quick on throwing news and like getting active in the chat, and I wanted to be the first one, especially with this news, for the great value Kenneth Faried. Okay, sorry.
But guess what? On that contract, that's fine, because that's a steal.
You're right. It is a steal. I make jokes that he's a great value Kenneth Faried, but on that kind of money with a player, a team option for the second year,
I would say player if I had to guess. I'm not sure. The details are probably out there.
Right, but that's such a steal. That's $19 million for Montrezl Harrell's 6th man of the year. He's title hunting. We thought Gallinari was title hunting. He ain't title hunting. Montrezl Harrell's title hunting.
And it's a double pro, because not only do they get a good player for a good price, they're hurting their opponent. They're hurting the Clippers, and
I think that's the biggest thing, because I don't think he fits on the Lakers.
But for $9 million though, like, you can't beat that. Like, the level of player he is, you can kind of find ways to have an impact. And in like the Lakers will be able to protect him more defensively. Like, he's going to get to actually play with Anthony Davis, who is an elite rim protector, elite defensive player, where they didn't have that. Like, playing him with Zubac made no sense, where now AD can spend a little time maybe, at the elbow, around the perimeter, and Montrezl Harrell can still eat. Like, I think he's just going to be really annoying on the Lakers. Like, I don't love the fit, but you can't beat him for $9 million.
Right, and not to mention, from what I saw, the Clippers had no idea this was coming. Like Patrick Beverley was like, "What the hell" on Twitter, which is also just great because the Clippers are rattled even more than they were, going into this offseason, how their season ended.
I wonder how Kawhi feels.
I wonder too. I imagine him just staring out with no emotion out a window, like some sort of Sith Lord from Star Wars, just waiting, trying to figure out what he's gonna do next. But I like the fit of Harrell because again. It makes sense now what happened with Dwight Howard because it turns out that Dwight Howard thought he had a deal with the Lakers for $3.6 million, and then he was going to sign it, and he found out the deal got pulled. Well, it makes sense why the deal got pulled because the Lakers found out they could get Montrezl Harrell on the cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they still have JaVale McGee, too.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still going to remain a little bit skeptical of it until I see how it looks on the court, and I agree with all the points you guys are making in terms of how he sort of fits in regards to AD is like the perfect guy to play next to him. But I think ultimately Montrezl Harrell is a 5. He's not a 4. And obviously Davis probably wants to play forward. And I guess it's sort of just like switchy, witchy, and just sort of like either guy could just plays in the front court in some sort of variability. I question it somewhat. I've never been the most debate we had when we were formulating our top 25 free agents was around Montrezl Harrell. And despite the fact that he's now signed for what I think is an under market value deal, I still question the fit. And I would have questioned the fit in most organizations. Like for me, and obviously this isn't going to happen because we know he's signed with the Lakers, I think his best fit is on like a team like Charlotte. I think that a team that just needs an energy and needs a guy to just where he can utilize his skill set, where it's just like he needs the ball, he needs to eat off the offensive rebounds. Whereas Davis, maybe like the games where he was having 2 rebounds, he did suffer. But I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical. Not as skeptical as Nick on that De'Aaron Fox.
Oh, that is not even true. I wasn't even that skeptical. But
don't get me wrong, though. I don't like this fit at all for the Lakers. I think it's a steal of a deal. But as I said in the chat, I hate this move.
But it's a good contract that they can trade.
That too.
$9 million for Montrezl Harrell.
That's a good point. The floor spacing though to me is troublesome. Like the defense, right? You're bringing Schroeder and Harrell. Both those guys aren't necessarily known for their defense. They did get 2 of the best role players off the bench, without a question. But I too, Jack, I have the same kind of fear of, I see a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, the Lakers are so much better now." I'm not positive that they're that much better yet.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the price still going to bring KCP back. That's the deal they're working on. KCP wants to come back, so that's obviously going to be a boost. But like you said, there is some kind of fear with the fit. But Anthony Davis is a guy who can hide some of those defensive issues for a guy like Montrezl Harrell.
But the thing is, too, is they don't necessarily need to close games with him, so that helps them a lot. Where the Clippers had to depend a lot more on Montrezl Harrell, where if he's only making $9 million, him in a lesser role, you don't feel as upset about it. You know what I mean? It's just he's going to play a bench role. I don't think he's going to really close games for them, and I get it. The fit's not great, and I don't love it. You guys know how much I love spacing, and I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Montrezl Harrell when we did the preview, but just think for $9 million, you just got the 6th man of the year. The Lakers, going into it, you can't really beat that.
Yeah, I guess, but if we're looking at other guys on the market, I think the Wes Matthews signing is better, the Schroeder signing is better, and both of those guys will be closing games. And Wes Matthews is on $3 million, and I think he'll close games. And Montrezl Harrell is on $9.5 million. Now I get it, you overpay to get an asset from another team and such. And this is slightly breaking news. Robin Lopez has agreed to terms with the Washington Wizards. The John Wall replacement.
What was the contract? Just probably...
it just says Keith Smith just reported. I'm not sure. So.
Did you see the reason for him opting out?
No. What,
I think it was that he was like, why would I opt in if the Bucks are just going to trade me wherever they want? I want to pick where I want to go.
Oh, wow.
That's what's up. You know what? I'll take the L on the money if I won't get $5 million, but at least I'm going to be where I want to be.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get to a few comments in the chat that I wanted to get to. It's a W and this is via at Mukand M16. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It's a W for the Lakers just because it's a steal from the Clippers. I don't disagree with that, actually, to be honest.
That's fair.
And at the Sean Gross, 5 on offense and a 4 on defense. It's intuitively a mess, but seems like it could work. I think it could work as well. Robin left Brooke and Giannis. It's thanks for D-Rock for that. Crimson Striker wants the Blake Griffin talk now. I I'm skeptical of it. Look, I think that there's something going on behind the scenes because let's look at the Grant departure from the Denver Nuggets side of things. Millsap is an unrestricted free agent as well. You're going to be relying on Will Barton as your primary wing defender because Grant was immense in the playoffs, up against LeBron James and such. And I think it downgrades them as a real championship contender. If they had have retained him, I would have been like, okay, the Nuggets are in tier 2 for championship contention after the Lakers or whatever. But losing Grant, I think, is a big blow for them. Kory, what do you think?
I mean, it definitely hurts. I mean, he was in that Lakers series, he was their best defender or their best option going against LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now, of course, you can only do so much against 2 top 5 players, but Grant definitely held his own. And like I mentioned, when that series, I mentioned this before, I should say, when that series finished, the first person LeBron went up to from the Nuggets was Jeremy Grant. He leaned in, they had a conversation, they talked, and whatever it was about. And I think that, it shows that, Grant caught the eye of the best player in the league and one of the greatest players of all time, maybe the best player of all time, depending on where you stand. So I think it's a huge loss for the Nuggets. And also, who's going to be playing those Jeremy Grant minutes now? More Torrey Craig? You're going to, Paul Millsap? There's not a great option to replace Jeremy Grant. Like you said, Jack, they were knocking on the door of being, true contenders, and they definitely just took a step back by not being able to retain a key part of their future, I think, in Jeremy Grant.
And they just traded a first-round pick for him, too. To acquire him in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's like, why wouldn't you retain him? I get it, though. $20 million for Grant is a lot. Yeah, and I don't think when you're a small market team you can afford to make mistakes. And in my eyes, that would have been a mistake. You know what I mean? Because you still have the future of Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. need to add a defensive wing. Don't overspend your money on Jeremy Grant. I don't think that would have been a good idea. Maybe in, the short it would have been cool, but then 2 years from now we're like, damn, the Nuggets have no cap space. They could have signed this guy, and they could be true contenders. Like you said, Kory, they'd still be tier 2. It's not like we're talking about, I'm trying to think of a 4 that prime Paul Millsap. If it was prime Paul Millsap or something like that, that would make more sense. But Jeremy Grant, he's very good and he had some really good moments, but it's not like he's the most elite guy and you're willing to spend $20 million on him.
Right.
A really wholesome tweet from DeAndre Jordan. When you forgot your wallet, but your boy got you. #buckets, #Brinks truck, and it's DeAndre Jordan doing the elbow celebration to Joe Harris and Joe Harris doing it back. That's just made me like DeAndre Jordan just a little bit more.
So you're okay, a little bit more okay with the contract. As it progresses, it gets a little bit.
I mean, I'm commenting. I'm like, he'd better be laying some screens for my guy. Ed Davis, the guy who I think unlocked Joe Harris in a big way because and I think Joe Harris has said that. How much he loved the screens from Ed Davis to just got him open. If DeAndre's just going to look, he's on a $9 million deal, and if he's just laying in screens for Joe Harris, that's all I care about. At the end of the day. But yeah, there's so much going on. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 deals we haven't even discussed yet.
All right, let's get to it. I mean, I think there is still a possibility for Denver to make another move, but obviously let's talk about some stuff that's...
No, we can't. Denver offered him 3 years, $60 million, and Jeremy Grant declined. Because he wants a pure offensive role.
Wow.
My God. What?
Wow.
To go to Detroit.
If I'm Denver, I'm sick.
I mean, if you're Denver, you're sick. I mean, you got to be sick if you're Denver. Unless he just thought maybe Michael Porter Jr. is going to take a bigger role next year and I'm not going to get shots. But still, you got to think there was other options. I guess not at $20 million. That was the only option he probably had, those 2 teams. But that's crazy.
I have...
It's hard to be mad at a player, though, for saying, I want more touches and I want to be a big... You know what I mean? I want to be the best version of Jeremy Grant. It's hard to be upset about that.
Right, look, everyone's allowed to have their own, priorities in terms of what they want to get out of their own, personal sporting career or whatever career they want. If I were him, though, just purely subjectively, I'd want to win. And you're playing alongside 8 million centers, including Jahlil Okafor, Tony Bradley, and whoever else. Yeah, you're going to get touches, and Killian Hayes is going to maybe get you some nice dimes, but the Detroit Pistons might be the worst team in the league.
Yeah. Jeremy Grant's literally going to get 20 shots a game. He's going to be their lead offensive player probably, if I had to guess. I mean, Blake Griffin will still be there probably unless there's some type of sign and trade that we don't know about, but...
It's a weird one. It's a really, really weird one. Kory, what do you think? What do you think of his priorities? Would agree, disagree? What would, if you were in Jeremy Grant's shoes, are you trying to get those touches and put up? Like, if we're on a podcast together and you're podcasting with me because I won't shut up about Joe Harris, would you rather podcast with just Nick so then you can get some of your takes off and I'm not hogging the airtime and the mic time at all?
Not at all. I'm about winning, and I think winning is a collective deal. I would like the Joe Harris version of that, right? You guys can be Durant and Irving. Just leave me my $75 million. I'll be all right. I'll do whatever you need me to do.
And the crazy thing is the money was there. I mean, that is surprising.
That is surprising, though.
But like man, I mean, I would say like in 2021 maybe we'll get a big contract, but I don't think anyone's ever going to offer him $20 million a year again unless he really pops off and he turns into some all-star that we didn't know he had, in his game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just stunned that I mean, again, like you said, Nick, I'm never going to knock somebody for, having the same option and just wanting to play, more or play in a bigger role. So, I mean, shout out to him. I hope it works out in Detroit, but it just looks kind of bleak right now.
Yeah, it's just something different. You just don't typically see it. Usually guys are getting the money or they're, picking the contender. It's not usually they want the money in the bigger role. You know what I mean? So yeah. I'm kind of like it in a way. I kind of like the mentality that he has. Obviously, he's not going to win, but he's going to be able to be the best version of himself, and he's going to have an opportunity to prove that maybe he thinks, he's one of the best, I guess, power forward, small forward combo forwards in the league.
It could work out in the same way in the sense, maybe this first year in Detroit he pops off and he shows like, look, I should have a bigger offensive role, and then someone trades. Because again, like $20 million isn't bad if Jeremy Grant is playing, at a high level in a bigger role, right? Like if he starts popping off offensively, we're seeing him in a bigger role, showcasing more skills, then you're like, okay, $20 million is not bad for Jeremy Grant. It's just, again, we've seen him play really good defense and been, a subpar to above, somewhat above average offensive player with a very streaky three-point shot.
Yeah, the one thing that does help in terms of trading him, sorry to cut you off, Jack, would be Detroit would probably be willing to take bad contracts back in exchange, so that'd make it more likely you get a move off. But Jack, what are you thinking? Hopefully.
I'm thinking of this from the Blake Griffin side of things because I've heard things behind the scenes, and I'm not a source person or whatever.
He's got sources in Australia. Shit's crazy, man.
Yeah. Blake Griffin's down here, and he's up in Melbourne. He's down at the local Altona basketball court. In all seriousness, Blake Griffin, I think, is going to want to come back and go, bang. Remember me? He was all NBA caliber before those knee, lower leg
18,
injuries.
19, yeah.
18, 19. He was playing immense basketball, one of the 15 best players in the NBA. Now, I'm not saying he can get back to that level, but I do back a guy like Blake Griffin. I've always been a fan. I have a Blake Griffin jersey, funnily enough, two Blake Griffin jerseys, because I have this thing with my ex-girlfriend. Her dad hated Blake Griffin, and I just was a really big fan. And he's like, as a joke Christmas present, he got me a white Clippers one and a black Clippers jersey, and I wear them all the time because they're really damn comfortable. But so I've always been a bit of a Blake Griffin fan, and I wonder whether because if you hear John Wall being like, I want out, you damn well probably going to hear Blake Griffin being like, I'm like the shortest player on the court right now. I'm having to play point guard and create my own shot and create everyone else's shot. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. I saw someone pose on Twitter a Westbrook for Blake Griffin trade.
Yeah.
That could be something?
I think actually Kory and I might have discussed that before.
Okay.
Actually, I think it was one of the deals we talked about on the hypotheticals. I mean, it makes sense from a schematic standpoint if James Harden stays in Houston because James Harden, goes back to primary ball handling duties. Bringing Christian Wood, you have Blake Griffin. It's not a terrible combo, just different from what James Harden's been running the last couple of years, of course, in small ball. And then, obviously Westbrook and Detroit's just able to go do your thing, go off the handle. I just don't know. I mean, I just don't really want to see anybody good in Detroit. Like, I'm not no offense against Detroit. Like, it's just you're not in that time period. Like, you're in a rebuilding phase. I just wouldn't want to see a star, somewhat in his prime get wasted.
And they just drafted Killian Hayes, right? So like they were going to want him to play. So I don't think getting Westbrook anymore makes as much sense for them. Prior, they didn't have a point guard. They could still talk themselves into Westbrook. I think it makes more sense for Houston to get like a different piece. But now they have Christian Wood. I'm not sure they're as intrigued with it. Maybe John Wall and Blake Griffin swap. I don't know, but it's tough to match that contract. That's the thing with Blake Griffin. Same thing for John Wall. Same thing for Westbrook. But if you ask me which guy I think could probably have the most impact on a winning team. Like I could see
Griffin.
same thing. I'm going to say Griffin because given his skill set, the way that he can play, and he's willing to be, a third option or something. Like he doesn't have to have the ball like Westbrook and Wall need. And his 3-point shot's probably better than both of theirs.
Yeah, I'm like I sort of mentioned, and I think his 3-point, he's the best. It's funny. He's the biggest guy out of all of them, and the player who prototypically should have the worst 3-point shot, but he has the best 3-point shot.
His last full season, he shot like 35% from 3 on 7 attempts.
Yeah, he was awesome. His mechanics are great now. He might be he's not the best passer, but he's a really good passer.
Yeah, he's a playmaker.
I think, he's an awesome. I think that he has a well-rounded game, whereas there are so many. And I'm not to say that there aren't many flaws in his game as well, but I think there's an immense greater amount of flaws in Wall and Westbrook's game.
Mm-hmm.
Corey, what's that face? What's that face, my dude?
Well, the Clippers had to shore up some moves after losing Harrell. They're bringing back Marcus Morris on 4 years, $64 million.
Whoa!
Yeah, $16 million a year for Marcus Morris. There's got to be a team option on that last year or something.
That's what?
Because how old is Marcus Morris? We're talking like
31, going to be 32, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, he did not play well. You know what I mean? It's not like we're talking about a guy who really like lit it up in the postseason and something like that. So
I don't mind it though. Like again, like it's, like it should work having Paul George play the 2, Kawhi at the 3, and then Morris at the 4, or whatever way you want to do. Like having those 3 guys like should work. But again, like you mentioned, Nick, Marcus Morris was so bad with that Clippers team. Never found a groove. Never found his role. And, can be kind of attributed to the fact that he got into the phase of Paul Millsap and kind of flipped the momentum of that series being a fake tough guy. I'm not a fake tough guy because I think he is kind of tough. I wouldn't want Marcus Morris pissed off at me, but you get what I'm saying.
Especially because you got to deal with the twin, too.
Right.
Yeah, look, I'm not a fan of Marcus Morris. I've made that known on plenty of occasions. I think he's a sexist. I think he is fake tough guy in a lot of realms. When it comes to true toughness as an athlete, you let your game do the talking. And when it came put up to shut up, he didn't. He shut up. Paul Millsap punked him, and the Denver Nuggets punked them. They all got punked. And if you're asking Marcus Morris to be your leader now, was Marcus Morris one of those guys in the offseason that was like, man, I don't really know. Is Paul George really that good? I think that he might have been one of those leaks. Maybe it was Harrell, maybe it was Lou Williams, whoever it was. But I don't think he's a great locker room fit. Look, looking at his individual game, I think he's a good defender. I think he's a good 3-point shooter. I think he's a good matchup for guys like LeBron. I don't think Anthony Davis he's a good matchup for, but I think he's a good wing defender for 3s and 4s. I don't know if Ibaka Zubac is your answer at the 5. Look, at the end of the day, Steve Ballmer's got all the money in the world, and if we're talking about worrying about luxury tax, I get it with the Warriors. I get it a little bit with the Nets, even though, as I've mentioned on the Brooklyn Buzz before, that Alibaba money continues to rise to the roost, and I think that Joe Tsai is in one of the 3, 4, or 5 richest owners after how the pandemic has gone for him and his businesses. Steve Ballmer has like the combined worth of like 25 of the owners, $70 billion. So $64 million, $60 million a year is chump change to a guy like him. And, Marcus Morris is an important player. He is an ideal sort of 4th guy on a roster. And if he can learn to just hone his aggression in a way where it's just like, you know what? I'm going to rebound for this team. I'm going to hit 3s. I'm going to play good physical defense without being a dickhead. Then I think that he's going to provide great value for the Clippers. It's just that he has too many of these moments that it's just like, what the hell are you doing? And he maybe can learn a thing or two from his brother Markieff in terms of seeding a role and going, you know what? I'm going to buy into my role here. I know that these guys are the superstars, PG and Paul and Kawhi Leonard. I don't need to hijack the offense here or whatever. Now that I've got my money and stability, now I can buy into my role. Hopefully, and maybe Ty Lue allows him to do that as well. I'm a big Ty Lue fan. We'll have to wait and see. Nick, you high, low on this?
No, I thought you brought up a great point with what you just said, Jack. The fact that he has his money, maybe he'll be a little bit more stable in his role and buy into that a little bit. Marcus Morris kind of strikes me as a guy, the idea of Marcus Morris is kind of better than what you actually get on the court because he's just so streaky. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you watch him play and he seems like so good and he's this perfect complementary wing, great defense, knocks down a couple 3s, and then you'll watch him again, gets beat defensively, gets a little frustrated, misses all of his wide open 3-point attempts. So like I get it. But from the Clippers' perspective, like you said, Steve Ballmer's got the money. As long as they have Kawhi and PG, they're not really going to have cap space to do anything. They traded a first-round pick for this guy. They're going to have to retain him. And like you said, ideally, on paper, he's still a great fit for them. So I don't love the number. I can honestly see this contract being traded in 2 years to Detroit for Jeremy Grant.
Yeah.
With like a couple picks. Or maybe one or two picks.
It's an overpay, but I think a lot of the deals that we've seen today are overpay, so it's almost like the market has been reset like it was. Which is crazy, I agree.
There's no cap space anywhere.
I know. Look, I don't know, Nick. I don't know. These are billionaires. A lot of these owners aren't necessarily suffering in ways that we've sort of seen. And, we've heard Joe Tsai sort of say he's willing to go into the luxury tax. He's willing to go into the luxury tax. Well, he is. Steve Ballmer is maybe one of the most competitive owners. We've sort of seen him, buy stadiums away from James Dolan just because he doesn't like him and shit. So these sort of super billionaires compared to Mr. Tillman breakfast food frittata are a dime a dozen. But should we get to that deal, the Christian Wood deal? But we haven't really touched on it.
Yeah, we didn't really touch on it.
We saw the 3 years, $27 million, and then it was just like, that's a steal for the Houston Rockets.
It didn't make sense, to be honest.
And then Shams Charania is like, he's still exploring other avenues, options per sources. And then we hear it's now a 3 years, $41 million deal. And is it sign and trade or not sign and trade?
I don't think it's.
I think it's mid-level exception.
Woj did have a tweet saying that it could be a part of a sign and trade, but he didn't clarify if it was or not.
So the mid-level exception is like $39.8 million over 4 years. So it could be something like that with maybe some weird bonuses, or maybe the numbers just misreported, or there's some other calculations in there given like his age or something like that. But hey, that's a good deal for Houston. And we touched on it quickly, but like I said, getting a young player like that, he can fit next to Harden, or he could also fit next to your rebuild. You know what I mean? He's at that age where he can impact now, but he also can grow into being a better player.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm a fan of. I thought that Detroit would have been much better served in directing their money to a guy that they've built, but maybe he saw options elsewhere.
Maybe he wanted to win.
Maybe he wanted to win. I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to be the sixth center on the roster. I have no idea how that all worked out, but I actually think that Christian Wood. It's weird to me because I don't know how. Does this change the trajectory of James Harden and Russell Westbrook staying in Houston? Because Christian Wood is a really nice third piece to have and a really good center. He shoots the ball well. He's a decent enough defender, and he's young. I can't remember the Houston Rockets had a player who was like young and could build going forward with them.
Clint Capella.
Yes, Clint Capella, and obviously we know what happened there. I'm almost like befuddled by how good of a move this is, and like it's an under market value deal based off all the deals we've spoken about tonight. It's a little bit wild. Kory, what are your thoughts on Mr. Frittata doing something okay?
I mean, again, no matter what happens with James Harden and Russell Westbrook, Christian Wood is a guy you could have now for the future. Mm-hmm. So it's a safety net regardless of what happens. And I think if you decide to keep Westbrook, or you can't move Westbrook, or vice versa with Harden, you just have a player who can help you win now. So I think it's a win-win move for the Houston Rockets. It's a steal. Again, I know that, the Pistons from that angle, maybe he just didn't want to play in Detroit. And if you're looking at options, you much rather play with the Houston Rockets, regardless of what their future may look like, rather than the Detroit Pistons, because the Pistons have now, 5 years of being mediocre, where the Houston Rockets seem to be at least a little bit more aggressive in trying to win basketball games. So, I like it for Christian Wood.
It feels like maybe Detroit wasn't that interested in Christian Wood. Like maybe they just didn't want to bring him back. Maybe there's something we don't know that they know, or they thought long-term it wasn't going to be great, or maybe he's peaked at the player that he's going to be. I think for Houston, it does provide James Harden with a unique skill set that he hasn't really played with. But I'll ask you guys, do you think Christian Wood's better than Robert Covington?
No.
Not yet, but I think there's more upside with Wood right now than there is with Covington. We know who Covington is.
Yeah.
That's not like a diss, but Wood can still become possibly, a top 10 center in the league if he develops correctly. That would be the only difference, I think.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm just saying from the sell to James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Oh, we got Christian Wood, but we just traded away Robert Covington. You know what I mean?
I have a question.
And they
for
could
you
have
guys.
kept both, actually. Well, no, they couldn't have. I think they needed to dump some money to get to the full the full MLE.
Who's the better player, Marcus Morris or Montrezl Harrell?
Marcus Morris in my eyes.
Oh, really?
Do you think Montrezl Harrell's better?
I think Marcus Morris fits better on like every team. Where like maybe you could say Montrezl Harrell has like more talent or like he just puts up more stats. But I think it's easier to see Marcus Morris on a championship team than Montrezl Harrell, which we saw last year in the postseason. And not to say that Marcus Morris was even good, but his fit on the floor was better than Montrezl Harrell.
Fair.
That's what I think. I think it's all about when we see. It's reductive to just judge people based off one simple thing, but it's just like, are you going to be contributing to championship winning basketball? And I don't think Montrezl Harrell can. I think he can. It's the Draymond Green sort of thing. There's 16 game players and there's 82 game players. I think Marcus Morris can be at least maybe a 12 game player, but I don't think Montrezl Harrell. I think you take the bubble with a grain of salt because of everything that went on in his personal life and, obviously him struggling to get his legs back. Marcus Morris wasn't great either, but I just honestly think that, look, if Morris was on the Lakers and they got him instead of Harrell, I would have been over the moon because I think that is a perfect fit to put at the 4 alongside Davis. And I think that's nearly a championship solidifying move. Montrezl Harrell is a good regular season move, and I think that, during the regular season when LeBron's having a few games off, and you need Montrezl Harrell to put up some 2015 games, that's good. You've got a guy who can contribute, and ultimately, championships aren't won in whenever we're playing the basketball, December, January, but you need to win those games, and you need to build the team up until July, June, when it does matter. And who knows, by that point in time, we could see Frank Vogel unlock a defensive side to Montrezl Harrell. We could see the system bring out the best in him that we haven't seen before. I'm open to it.
Because there is, like he does play with energy and effort. So like in your head, you would think that he'd be a better defender. But you know what I mean? I think it's just some of the fundamentals, some of the system. And like you said, Montrezl Harrell might not help you in the postseason, but he will help you win regular season games and really help you kind of save LeBron and AD for the postseason, especially this year because I think you need to save LeBron a little bit more than normal given his age and then the shortened offseason.
We've got a question from @NetsHead11 here. Any Ibaka update? Who still has cap space? Any Fred VanVleet update? Now, the Ibaka update, in fact, you guys jump on because I've got a tweet I want to get out.
Okay.
And I'll be able to find. So, Fred VanVleet, obviously space has been used by Atlanta on Danilo Gallinari. You guys can jump into that a little bit. I've just got to quickly find this tweet.
Yeah, Ibaka, I'll just say one thing quick, Kory. The Lakers signed Montrezl Harrell. That was one of the teams that Ibaka was looking to sign with. So that's just something to consider. Every team, even the Rockets. The Rockets signed Christian Wood. That's another team that Serge Ibaka was looking to sign with. So I know you're probably asking on behalf of the Nets. So it makes it a little bit more likely for the Nets, but I always still felt like it was a pipe dream given the contract. And the Fred VanVleet stuff, I don't think there's much to it. I think he's going to end up back in Toronto, and if he doesn't, really the only other option is New York.
Right. Yeah, that's all I was going to say. For Fred VanVleet, it looks like he's either going to be New York or back to Toronto. Serge, I do think Montrezl Harrell leaving, again, I don't know what the cap would be for the Clippers, but the Clippers now need a big, right? So maybe Ibaka makes sense for the Clippers.
I'll look up their numbers real quick.
Right, but I don't think it's good, their numbers, obviously, especially after you get that big contract to Marcus Morris. But like Ibaka would make sense for the Clippers. I do think the Nets still are a likely destination, on top of, again, still the Toronto Raptors for Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, he easily could go back, and they could easily just give him a one-year cash out, especially if they retain VanVleet, because then they'll still be competitive. They're going to lose Gasol. There's been, I want to say there's reports for them having interest in Tristan Thompson, maybe.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that as well.
Because the whole Marc Gasol thing, like we said, is kind of up in the air. The reports he wanted to go to Spain, then those were saying they were false, and there was just some interest from the Lakers. He could still technically sign with the Lakers. I think it's less likely with Montrezl Harrell being there. But I think Marc Gasol might be just a ring chaser right now, looking for a vet min deal to hang on someone's bench.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense as well.
Look, it'd be pretty basketball. Seeing Marc Gasol and LeBron James out there dropping dimes, man, that'd be fun to watch.
Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis would just be set up for easy attempt after easy attempt.
It'd be amazing. I'd love to see that. I think I'm trying to find this tweet still, but if you guys want to jump into, I still look for it. What do we got here? Derek Jones to the Blazers on a 2-year,
No, not that one. Let's go to one that's more exciting. Gallinari with the Hawks.
Okay, yeah, you jump into that one.
So obviously, Gallinari said he was ready to look for a ring and the ring hunt, and he's ring chasing. He wants to win. He wants some hardware. Well, that was a lie. He decided with the Hawks. And again, from the Hawks' perspective, it's not a bad move because the Hawks want to win now. They've been talking about adding pieces around Trae Young to make that team more competitive. Obviously, Hayward was a guy they were looking at, but it seems like from everything I saw that Hayward to the Pacers, a lot of people are almost considering it to be a done deal. It's just working out the finer points and trying to make Boston pleased with whatever assets they're getting in return. The Knicks obviously are also still a team in the race because they have the cap space to get Hayward. But the Hawks got Gallinari. They weren't going to wait for Hayward. They got Gallinari. Gallinari is still a very good stretch forward in this league, and it's a good win-now piece for them. I don't necessarily like it for Gallo personally because I thought Gallo was serious about wanting to chase a ring and actually contend, and said he's going to be competing for a bottom playoff spot in the East. But Gallo got paid, right? It was like 3 years, $61 million, I think.
Yep, that's the most ever on a multi-year deal for a 30-plus player without an All-Star selection.
Pretty impressive, and he definitely deserved it after how he's played the last 2 years, being more durable than years past. Obviously able to stay healthy in a shortened season, but he put up really good numbers again with OKC, despite falling short in the playoffs, as we mentioned on previous pods.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get. I'm not like super excited about the deal. It's like. In overpay, obviously Gallinari is going to help them win. They probably weren't going to. They have a ton of cap space. They weren't really going to spend it anywhere else. He'll be able to make his money, probably transition maybe into a bench role by the end of his contract. But he'll help them be a better team this year and give Trae Young a real offensive option to kind of rely upon. And it probably means something for John Collins.
It does. I was about to say, John Collins' future now looks up in the air. And I just want to say, I would have much rather liked the Hawks to have given this money to Jeremy Grant, and Jeremy Grant to go into this role with the Hawks rather than Gallinari, because, again, the Hawks' issue also has been defense. Gallo doesn't help any of those issues on defense, whereas a guy like Jeremy Grant would have, shored up those issues and probably would have been able to get a bigger role offensively maybe with the Hawks.
Yeah, I'm... With the Okongwu drafting as well, Collins just doesn't seem to be there. Now, obviously, what other team is going to look to sign him, I really don't know.
Well, he's still under contract, so no one can sign him. They'd have to trade him.
And I know you dropped in the DMs to me, Nick, that he's looking for the max, and he's a great player, but we've still yet to see him sort of impact winning basketball. He got that drug suspension last season. He's going to be wanting to put up numbers in a contract sort of year, so I'm intrigued to see how it all plays out. Now, all right, I got the tweet. So we apparently have Nets fans tracking flights, literally. Someone found out that at Serge Ibaka's flight details, and he's landing at Teterboro Airport at 6:53. The flight went from Miami to New Jersey, which is Teterboro. Am I saying that right? I've never even heard of that airport.
No, I haven't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the pronunciation because it's not anything I've ever heard of. So
it's apparently in New Jersey, closer to you guys than it is to me. We literally have flight trackers happening now. I'm just reporting what I see on Twitter, and it's not me saying that he's coming to New Jersey to speak to Sean Marks and Joseph Tsai about that taxpayer MLE. But look, it seems to me that the teams that are in the running for Serge Ibaka at this point in time are the Los Angeles Lakers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Detroit Pistons.
Well, I'd say the Lakers are out now because of their use of their MLE on Montrezl Harrell, so they don't have any way to sign Serge.
It's Nets or Raptors then?
Yeah, I think maybe look at Miami. That's always somebody I keep an eye on, just because.
Well, Denver too, right? Maybe Denver now that Jeremy Grant's not coming back, and maybe they don't want to bring back Millsap. Maybe they throw money at Ibaka.
Yeah, they lost Mason Plumlee, too. He could be, backup big. You could probably play him some minutes with Jokic, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, he's one of the more intriguing names out there. Now, there's been...
Woj just said on SportsCenter he expects a lot more moves to go down tonight, so hope you guys have some caffeine.
Want to get some Red Bulls going?
I saw somebody posted they had Red Bulls. I was like, oh, that's a really good idea.
I saw Duncan Smith. He had like 4 Red Bulls.
In Crown Royale, I think it was, too.
Yeah. Great night.
What I wanted to bring to you guys, what's the next one that I had? Oh, John Wall. we heard rumors of Russell Westbrook to the Clippers, last week or whatever. But now there's John Wall rumors bumbling around about the Clippers. Now, we've both said who we would prefer as players. Russell Westbrook is an all-NBA caliber player, and if he's in the right situation, can play like that. John Wall to the Clippers, does that make any sense?
Not really.
I mean, it would if he wasn't making as much money. Because I do think still, you look at this Clippers roster, I'm assuming Rondo is probably a guy they're going to target. Because they still need a true point guard, I think. They need someone who can facilitate for others. None of these guys are very good playmakers. It's not Patrick Beverly. It's not a strong suit of Paul George. I think Jeremy Grant. I think Kawhi Leonard has obviously gotten better in that area. Marcus Morris isn't known for it. So the Clippers definitely need a playmaker, someone who's gonna focus on getting other guys involved before themselves. Like John Wall would work in that regard. But again, I don't know how you're going to get that money in the matchup. Obviously, Marcus Morris getting this big contract would help, but I don't see them flipping Marcus Morris for John Wall with whatever contracts they have. It almost feels like the Rondo route is what makes the most sense for the Clippers right now.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty stupid for the Clippers to trade for John Wall. They have no idea who he's going to be, and they're a championship contending team, and they could lose Kawhi and Paul George this season. You're willing to bet on John Wall coming back from the injuries he's coming back from. You could trade. I would rather overpay for like Kyle Lowry or somebody in a trade, or whoever's out there. I'd trying to find a way to make it work. Or even maybe going after. I know he's not necessarily a great playmaker, but if you're looking for a point guard, you could always look at like Eric Bledsoe or George Hill or somebody like that. Or even actually Lonzo Ball, who I think the Pelicans aren't necessarily sold on. Like that would be a nice fit.
Yeah, I've heard Alex Kennedy brought out on his Twitter, could Lonzo Ball be traded?
Yeah.
And so look, Lonzo Ball, man, he'd be an awesome fit on the Clippers, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I think he'd be great there. Now, before Kory cut me off very, very rudely,
I'm sorry.
Jones Jr. to the Blazers, 2 years, $90 million, Cable. What do you think? I know you're not as enthused about as Danilo Gallinari, but I think it's a sneaky little good move.
He's a solid player. We saw his role with Miami. Doesn't play a boatload of minutes by any means. In a solid, 15 to 25 minute range. I do wonder by them bringing in another, guy who plays, the 3-4-5, what that means for Melo again. Melo is one of the free agents we still haven't seen picked up yet. So I do think after trading for Covington, this move as well, I'm starting to wonder if Melo's time in Portland is done. I know there were some rumors that a lot of teams anticipate Melo going back to New York to play for the Knicks to end his career. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if there's any strength behind those rumors. But it's a solid move for the Blazers, and I do think it also adds a little bit of defense, which is what they're trying to add here.
Yeah, I think it's a solid move for the Blazers. You add another, defensive-minded wing. You put a lot of the pressure on Dame and CJ to score. Obviously, Gary Trent's a guy that can score some threes for them, and obviously they just picked up Robert Covington. Doesn't sound like Melo's going to be back. Just doesn't really make sense necessarily. And they just brought back their guy, Enes Kanter. I kind of like what Portland's doing. They're not going to be a contending team, but they're better than they were last year. And a couple bounces for them. Maybe they could end up in the second round. Maybe they get lucky again like they did a couple years ago, end up in the Western Conference Finals. I just feel like they're a team that you don't want to see in the playoffs, given Dame Lillard. And now the contracts they have are a lot more tradable. They brought back Rodney Hood, which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought it was a slight overpay, but the second year's non-guaranteed. So I was like, okay, that's fine. It actually makes it a really nice contract to trade.
Was it 2 years, $21 million?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about that too, right? So Rodney Hood got 2 years, $21 million, and Montrezl Harrell got 2 years, $19 million, and Montrezl Harrell was $6 million a year.
And Rodney Hood's coming off a torn Achilles, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that. It
blows my mind, some of these figures.
He opted on a $6 million, and a lot of us thought he was going to opt in.
Yeah, look, none of this makes sense. I don't know what makes sense.
Where's the
anymore.
money coming from?
I don't know. It's like Bismack Biyombo, like Kory was mentioning, Timofey Mozgov all over again. There's little to no sense with what's happening, and we're like, it's a shallow market, or no one's going to be getting big money and stuff. But it's just now like Joe Harris, 4 years, $75 million. Davis Bertans, 5 years, $80 million. Jeremy Grant, 3 years, $60 million. There's money aplenty, and a guy who I sneakily want to chat about, and I saw John Krasinski do some reporting, and we chatted about it on YouTube at OTT Basketball with the restricted free agent series that we did on there. Malik Beasley, 4 years, $60 million. Kory, we were very wary of his off-court indiscretions.
Yeah.
Did Minnesota go over the top here?
I mean, I don't think they went over the top because, again, what we saw from Malik Beasley last year was really promising still, right? I mean, when he got to the Minnesota, he popped off, right? Shot, near 40% from three on 8 attempts, was going gangbusters, as you like to say, Jack, and was really becoming an offensive force. Again, the off-the-court stuff is worrisome. 4 years, $60 million. It's not terrible. I don't necessarily love the deal for a guy like Malik Beasley, who I don't think has proven that it's a sustained production from him, plus the off-the-court issues. So it's not necessarily a bad move, but also at the same time, if you're Minnesota, like, how many guards do you need, right? We talk about teams of power forwards and center. How many guards do you need, Minnesota? Like, figure this out. You got Malik Beasley, you got D'Angelo Russell, now you got Anthony Edwards, Ricky Rubio, Josh Okogie, Jared Culver. Like, how many guys do you need at the guard position? So maybe there's another move coming for them, or they're going to play super small around Cat. But it's definitely an interesting move, I think, because I thought when they drafted Anthony Edwards and Ricky Rubio was traded, in my mind I was thinking, oh, Malik Beasley probably isn't coming back because they're filling up these guard spots, and obviously that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I was surprised he still got a good number. 15 is, if he didn't have the legal issues, I thought 15 would be a fair number for him and a number that maybe he could even get more.
I literally mentioned that in the written piece that I did for OGDbasketball.com. I'm like, 4 years, $60 million. I predicted it. Like, I said 4 years, $50 or $60 million. And I didn't expect it to happen. And, I had to edit my byline after we found out about the off-the-court stuff. And we don't have to get into that. Obviously, it is worth everyone searching it up in terms of the battles that are happening behind the scenes. But I will report this because John Krasinski is our switched-on-a-beat reporter, as there is going around. And he tweeted this out after the signing. The Timberwolves have been supportive of Malik Beasley throughout his legal situation. This deal is a big show of faith that they believe in him. Now, likely they know more than we do as just some pundits.
And they know him. They know him personally.
Yeah, so obviously, take everything with a grain of salt. Good for Malik Beasley. But yeah, the fit of the roster construction, I think Kory makes a really good point. I tweeted out the Detroit centers and the Minnesota guards. Like, I get, Kenny Atkinson has always sort of been like, and Bob Myers are like, there's just basketballers. There's not just positionless basketball. But you kind of need guys above 6'4", and you need guys shorter than 7'3" to play on your basketball court if you want to have a cohesive team environment and an on-the-court product that makes sense. Here's a weird question for you, Kory. What makes less sense, or what makes more sense? However you want to take the question. The Minnesota situation with guards aplenty, or the Detroit Pistons with the big ball?
I'm going to say Minnesota makes more sense because at least the talent they have, I think, is better than what the talent is for the Detroit Pistons in terms of, I think a lot of these guards still have a lot of potential to be good, if not develop into, steady starters or role players, whereas, the Pistons, some of the guys they sign is big, Plumlee, we know who they are. They're not going to change they're not going to become better players at this point in their career. They might get worse. So I think I would say Minnesota.
Minnesota easily, for multiple reasons. One, like Kory said, talent-wise is a big difference, but there's one center position, there's two guard positions. You can play three guards. That's not the end of the world. We've seen offenses have success. Look at OKC last year. They played Chris Paul, Schroeder, and SGA a ton. They had a lot of success with that. And I think Josh Okogie and Jared Culver, I think they can play the three. I think that's fine. Josh Okogie might not have the height, but he plays very physical. Even D'Lo's not the smallest guard. And Anthony Edwards is supposed to be this elite athlete. So he should be able to maybe play up a little bit more. And Malik Beasley's not super small either. So I don't really see a ton of issue with them playing three guards. Maybe getting minutes for Anthony Edwards is going to be a little bit harder than anticipated, but he's still a rookie and he's really raw. There's plenty of question marks about him, and maybe going with a slow grind for him might work out better.
We'll get to this quick question before we get to some Gordon Hayward news. Via Luke hits me, Luke. I can't say that more than once. He questions Harden tonight. Nick, that's the big $1 million question. Harden tonight.
I love to see it, but I don't think so because they signed Christian Wood, so I think Houston is probably trying to convince Harden, we got Christian Wood, this is going to be so great, look at this guy, he's a great fit for you and Westbrook, a different piece, you never played with a versatile offensive big like this, but at the end of the day, I think Harden's still going to want out, but I don't expect to see it tonight. I'd love to see it tonight, though.
I don't see it happening tonight. I mean, I know that there are, as Woj said, he doesn't think the night's far from over. But I don't see that trade happening. But then again, I didn't see the Paul George happening, and then 3 a.m. I got a notification that it did. So who knows? Maybe we're in for the same type of treatment tonight.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It'd probably go into the wings, and I might have to do a solo Periscope if that's the case. You guys are sleeping, or else keep your notifications on.
Just call me. I'll wake up. Just call me.
I'll do it, my dude. Kory, I want to bring it to you. Rachel Nichols, obviously the jump is still going on right now. The latest on Gordon Hayward, and this is via Zach Lowe, you could argue he's the number one free agent on the market, naming the Pacers, Knicks, and Hornets as possible destinations. Paul Pierce says there's no way Hayward leaves $34 million on the table without another deal in place. Pacers, Knicks, and Hornets. Kory, rank those three teams in terms of likelihood of Gordon Hayward heading to those destinations.
Pacers, Hornets, Knicks, that order.
Okay.
I mean, the Pacers make the most sense because he's from Indiana. He's bought a house in Indiana. He's made it clear that his desired destination is Indiana. Mm-hmm. It's also the best chance for him to actually win and play in a competitive environment. Obviously, the Hornets are on track, and they've made some good moves. I like the draft pick of LaMelo Ball. Rozier, Devontae Graham. We saw what they did last year. PJ Washington. It's a solid team, and he would definitely up them in regards of making them more competitive. The Knicks, I just don't like the fit with New York. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Timeline-wise, fit underneath Tom Thibodeau, playing alongside R.J. Barrett. To me, New York doesn't make sense. And also Hayward, Cam mentioned this. Hayward doesn't strike me as like a New York kind of guy.
There's a lot of pressure, especially if you're the only, star on the team. You know what I mean? Everyone would look for him to, I don't want to say save the Knicks because there's some realistic expectations, but they'd expect him to be a lot better than probably what he can be, or expect him to be like Utah Jazz, Gordon Hayward. I still wouldn't rule it out, though, because the Knicks want to be relevant. It's still in the Northeast. It's maybe not the ideal fit, but there's probably not going to be fans next year, so that takes some of the pressure off. And then just, you still got to get the contract, you know what I mean? And at this point, Atlanta's money is starting to dry up a touch. I know they have a ton, and there were reports of the Bogdanovich offer sheet. We never really got full details on that number. So keep an eye on them, but their money could dry up, and then all of a sudden it could be, we didn't even mention them on the list. My bad for Atlanta. But Hornets, that'd be another team. And they have, I want to say, 19 mil, right? Like they don't even have the full, they'd have to open up some space with some other moves. So I don't know.
I think.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, with Batum and Cody Zeller and stuff, it wouldn't be hard to find the room for a Gordon Hayward. And look, I think fit-wise, he'd fit pretty nicely, in just to have an adult in the room in Charlotte. Terry Rozier is decent enough, but
and the Clippers have been interested in him.
Yeah, so there's sign and trades that are probably happening behind the scenes, and Woj is getting calls left, right, and center about all of those, no doubt. Kory, I guess as a fan of the Indiana Pacers and the likely deal, taking out the Danny Ainge side of things of what he wants is Miles Turner, and you get in return Gordon Hayward. I don't think I asked you on our last pod, our last Periscope. What does that mean for Victor Oladipo?
What, if they're trading for Gordon Hayward?
I mean, where is Victor? Obviously, we know that Victor Oladipo's trade value is maybe at an all-time low, despite the fact that he's recommitted and all those sort of things. I just
want to say it's pretty easy to get recommitted when there's no market for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'll ask you, I guess. And in fact, no, what? Let's change tack. When you heard the news of Oladipo being like, you know what? Hey, can I come play for you guys, New York? Can I come play for you guys, Miami? And I don't remember what the third team was, whoever it was. What did you think as a fan of the Indiana Pacers? It seemed really out of character.
I mean, it's just a bad look. It's worse than the Paul George fiasco, which I didn't think could get worse. From a guy saying, "I want to play from the Lakers, make this happen. I want to go." It's never good. And the worst part about the Victor Oladipo stuff was the fact of it was reported that multiple players on the Pacers heard him saying this to other teams. Can I come play with you guys? You guys got a spot for me. How would you feel if the guy you're going to battle with every night is actively seeing who will take him and where he might go next to play? It wouldn't make you feel good. It also wouldn't make you trust the guy as much. And also, again, he's never publicly said I want to go this place, and he's never publicly said like I want to stay here. Now, so he's come through and said it through Shams and through through other media outlets, but himself has never like come out and say it, which I think is the most concerning part. So, like it bothered me. I think it bothered most Pacer fans to hear your star, even though Victor Oladipo, I'm gonna be a dick and a little bit critical here, was only a superstar for one season. You don't want to hear that from your guy, especially when he's going to be a free agent the upcoming season. I think going for a guy like Gordon Hayward, it's almost a safety net, because if you end up losing Victor Oladipo next year, at least you still have Brogdon, you still have T.J. Warren, and then you would have Gordon Hayward as a bonus. So you still have a 4-player, cornerstone set to at least move forward if you do lose a guy like Victor Oladipo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's frustrating for a team when you're trying to set the culture or see what you're doing moving forward. Like, if your star player, your quote-unquote leader, is not fully bought in, it just makes it a struggle for the team to improve, kind of can mess up some of the chemistry. And for the Pacers, they're a team that, like, they need the cohesion to work, and they need guys to get better for them to kind of take that next step. It's not like there's a superstar on the roster, somebody who can really, like, take over by themselves. It has to be done as a cohesive unit. So if there's any type of issue, I feel like it's more harmful to a team like that.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a horrible look. And okay, now changing tack to the Gordon Hayward style side of things for UK Wall. Now, in terms of subjectively, you as a basketball fan, we've heard you playing on Full Access in the Outlet talk about many topics in basketball. What are your thoughts on Gordon Hayward on a possible fit on the Indiana Pacers, taking Victor Oladipo out of this?
But Oladipo's not on the team?
Let's hypothetically say he isn't, because to me,
let's say he was part of the sign and trade.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
I think you're adding a player in Gordon Hayward who has shown as a fourth option. Again, I went over the stats in the first week. I'll do it again. He averaged 17 points last year, 6 rebounds, 4 assists on shooting splits of 50, 38, and 85. Tied his career high in true shooting percentage at 59%. The only issue was he rolled his ankle twice this past year, and they were at inopportune times, so he missed some time. I think Gordon Hayward in a bigger role, you would expect him to go back to averaging near probably the points per game production as the Utah Jazz, 22, 23 points per game. Still provide the same amount of rebounding, maybe a little bit more assists, because, again, Gordon Hayward is a really good playmaker, and that's actually what the Boston Celtics lacked when he went down in the playoffs, was his ability to move the basketball and just to get other guys involved. So I think if you put him in with the Pacers, you're just adding another guy who can handle the ball. You're taking less pressure off Malcolm Brogdon, which is what they missed this year. Brogdon had to do so much ball handling without Victor Oladipo. I think T.J. Warren didn't get unlocked until late, so Hayward would just get moved up. Instead of being the fourth option on the Celtics, he'd go back to being the second or third option on the Pacers behind, T.J. Warren or Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, I really like Gordon Hayward as a third option. I think that's like a nice fit for him at this point in his career. Kory mentioned the versatility. He's just comfortable dribbling the ball. He's comfortable passing the ball. He's comfortable driving, pulling up. Like, he just has a full offensive game, defensively solid player. And like we said, the Pacers, to be successful, need to be a cohesive team. And if you're rolling out a lineup in this situation, let's just say they didn't trade Oladipo and they have Malcolm Brogdon, Victor Oladipo, Gordon Hayward, and T.J. Warren, and Sabonis. Like, that's a pretty nice offensive lineup. Defensively, you got the questions with Sabonis, but you have some other nice pieces in there that maybe could help, cover up for it.
Right.
Yeah, look, I think it's a good deal. I think Gordon Hayward is he just does a lot of good things on the basketball court.
I think Gordon Hayward is really like a perfect third star for like a duo. LeBron and AD had a Gordon Hayward, or even Kyrie and KD.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly, I think he'd be a nice fit on the Nets. That would never happen given the circumstances, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's like him, Drew Holiday, those sort of dudes who just like can do a lot of things in terms of creating their own shot, creating a shot for other, play a little bit of defense, and just have high basketball IQ and just do the right things on the court. So, yeah, very intriguing. Some not necessarily massive news, but Shams, Australian reporter James Ennis has recommitted to Orlando on a 1-year deal. I know we chatted about him a little bit on the Buznik as a Nets option. I guess that takes one sort of defensive wing off for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I would say I would assume they'd probably sign him for like close to veteran minimum. A lot of contenders are probably upset about it, especially a team like the Milwaukee Bucks is probably eyeing him as like a vet min ad to fill out their roster, given they still have like 5 or 7 spots open. So I think, a couple contenders are upset. Good for Orlando. Get a good, depth piece back. Not anything crazy, but a solid bench player.
Kory, what are your thoughts? Any thoughts on...
He's a solid, quote unquote 3-and-D wing. He's probably like
mostly
at the bottom.
D.
Yeah, mostly right, exactly. Mostly D, very streaky jump shot. It's not a bad get. I mean, again, he played with the Magic last year. I think Steve Clifford obviously loves defensive-minded players. That's kind of his specialty, so he fits right back in with them. And again, I think they're still. It's interesting that Evan Fournier is a guy who we haven't really heard much about so far here in day one, or the first 5 hours of day one.
Well, he opted in, so the only way he's going anywhere is trade.
Trade, yeah.
He opted in?
Yeah, he opted in yesterday. Yeah. But
I didn't realize that.
He did mention that he wants to find his way to the Clippers, Suns, and there was one other team. I can't remember what it was, but they're all contenders. So he wants to be traded to a better team.
Kory. At Nets head 11, Justin Holiday, 3 years, $18 million, Indiana, my friend.
Wow.
Good. That makes sense. I mean, he made $4.5 million last year. So they're giving him some more money for having quite a good year of production. Obviously, shot 40% from three on 4 attempts per game. Played good defense. They really liked him. Went cold in the bubble, but I like this move for the Pacers. It's good to keep Justin Holiday in house. Obviously, it's cool also to still have Aaron Holiday and Justin Holiday, 2 to 3 brothers. Probably not going to get Drew anytime soon because he's with the Bucks now. But I like this fit for the Pacers. It's a good re-sign.
Yeah, it's a good number. I think that's around like the taxpayer MLE. Obviously, that Pacers didn't use that aspect, but.
Yeah.
$6 million for him. He's a solid bench player. He can be a spot starter. We've talked about him a lot in the preview show. Good 3-point shot. Improved a lot this year. Hopefully he can maintain it moving forward. And defensively, he's a good player. I think, like you said, Kory, Pacers are happy to have him. And I think even in a role where he doesn't even have to play make, if you add a guy like Gordon Hayward, it makes his life even a little bit easier. Just the less he has to do in the more terms of just like easy cuts, pass the ball, score, or shoot. It's not like he has to do anything with it.
Yeah,
he featured in our top 25 in the NBA free agency series we did for the outlet.
What, 22 we have him?
22, yep.
That's about right.
Yep, 22. And look, I think we could have easily ranked him higher now looking at a lot of these other guys on this list. And I think
a good number.
It's a really, really good contract. I think that with all the contracts that we have seen tonight, this is Indiana getting him at under market value. At least in comparison. Look, I think Justin Holiday is a really good player, and 3 years is a good length of time as well. This was 2 years, $12 million. He might be wanting to get back out on the market, maximize his money a little bit.
Yeah.
But look, it shows that there's possibly a desire and a love for playing in Indiana. Kudos to him. I think he's going to be providing really good value for the Pacers for these 3 years, and hopefully he gets the player option there. Obviously, that'll be reported soon enough because he was really good for, and Kory can obviously allude to this. He was really good for the Pacers this season, and I think he's going to continue to contribute going forward under their new head coach.
And I think it's a situation where, like Kory mentioned it, he hasn't necessarily got a big paycheck. He's kind of bounced around a little bit, Chicago, New York, Indiana. Now it's like an opportunity for him to, kind of settle down a little bit and get that $18 million. That's still life-changing money when you haven't necessarily cashed out yet.
Yeah,
100%.
Big time. I got a tweet here from Sarah K. Spencer, guys. The Hawks still hope to get a deal done with John Collins, who is up for an extension, I'm told just now. Of course, he's got 1 more year left on his contract, but significant given the Gallinari addition. Collins said he wants to stay in Atlanta. Is that
surprising?
Does that, surprise you, Nick? Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, you're locking up a lot of money, and you just drafted a Kongwu. I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name, but that's another big. Yeah, that's a big that like how are you going to get minutes for all these guys? And I know we've all talked about it. John Collins pretty much like getting some minutes at small ball 5 is kind of important for him. Just given his skill set. And now all the bigs they have there, like you're playing Capella big money, you're going to want to play him minutes. You just got Gallinari, you're going to want to play him minutes. It's just going to have to be like a slim rotation. It just feels like the rookies kind of get the short end of the stick. And I honestly wouldn't rush into the John Collins extension. He's a restricted free agent. You don't really have a need to extend him right now.
Oh, interesting here. Luke hits me. Luke, Pooch has reported that Heat offered Marcus Morris $18 million per season. Now, I don't know if it was 3
probably
years.
A 1 year deal or a 1 year with a team option. I couldn't see in Miami getting into their cap space for Marcus Morris.
Wasn't there a rumor going around? I don't know if you tweeted it today, Nick, about Jay Crowder could be on the outs.
Yes, I did. I retweeted somebody. I think they were going to offer Jay Crowder the same type of deal that they offered Dragic and Myers Leonard, that 1 year, second year team option, non-guaranteed, whatever, and he didn't want it. I think he wants a long-term deal, like 3 or 4 years. I think the Lakers were interested in him, the Suns and the Clippers maybe. Probably not the Lakers or Clippers anymore, given that I don't think they have the money to do it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami doesn't retain him. And the Marcus Morris thing, like I said, I think it was probably the same type of deal. Like, Miami's trying to avoid everything they can in terms of getting into their 2021 cap space.
For those playing along at home, Jay Crowder is our 19th ranked free agent in our top 25 free agent series. We also, in fact, you know what I think would be a fun exercise? I'm going to go through the names that haven't been re-signed yet in our top 25 free agency series. I think that'd be a good one to sort of just touch on.
Yeah, because Kory and I eventually have to sleep at some point.
Got to go to bed, and I'll finish as well with like quick news hitters. Fred VanVleet hasn't been signed yet. DeMar DeRozan, there's rumors surrounding him.
He opted
obviously.
in, so.
Yep, and still in trade rumors, I believe so. Gordon Hayward, Serge Ibaka, obviously Nets fans will be looking at that one. Who else have we got here? Tim Hardaway Jr. opted in. KCP, there's plenty of rumors surrounding him. Aaron Baines and Carmelo Anthony, and Paul Millsap out of the guys in our top 25. And David Aldridge has reported around Carmelo Anthony that Blazers are still hoping they can re-sign him, despite adding Covington via trade. And Derek Jones, still minutes and an important role to play. His impact on the team last year was substantial. So we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
So it answers the question we talked about a little bit earlier. Final quick news.
Interesting, for him to get minutes, because you assume they want to play Zach Collins, right? And they just got Cantor, so he's going to be their backup big because he played really well there. For some reason, Enes Kanter was +5 on his overall rating in Portland compared to everywhere else, and obviously Nurkic is there, so. I don't know. It's going to be tough to really find minutes, but maybe I guess Melo would make sense to cut his minutes down to 20 at this point.
Yeah, probably.
I think that he'd be okay with that. That would be my thing, right?
It depends how his body feels, to be honest.
True. Another good point.
I remember when Kevin Garnett started getting up there, and it just got to a point where he knew that he could only play a good 20 minutes. The 20 minutes he played, he'd be good. If he played anything more, he'd start to look washed.
Right.
Final ones, lads. I think we might have touched on it a little bit. Dwight Howard, obviously, that whole saga.
Oh, yeah, we didn't really touch on the ad in Philly. I just want to say a couple quick points. I know people were kind of surprised by the deal, but I actually like it because Joel Embiid's kind of due to miss 10 games this season. You know what I mean? There's always some random injury with him, an ankle sprain, a knee sprain, elbow or whatever. Now you have Dwight Howard can fill in. You got him at a cheap price. It's not bad. It's not a bad move. It's not like you paid a lot for him. Veteran minimum for a solid backup center.
Yeah, definitely. It was surprising because he obviously deleted the tweet that he was going back to LA. Absolutely hilarious. It has been a wild day, my guys. Absolutely wild day. I'm sure you guys are. Robin Lopez at Nets Head 11. I don't think it's him. Just in regards to Nets at 11, I'm talking about Robin Lopez. He tweeted out the Troy community gif where everything's on fire. I think that's more about the free agency situation. I'm not sure he regrets signing with the Wizards. That's what I think. But other final quick hitters, Trey Burke signing a nice little deal, re-signing with the Mavericks for 3 years, $10 million. I really like that deal. I think that's he was really good for them in Orlando.
Yeah, they just lost Seth Curry, so they need to keep one of those two.
Yep, absolutely. We have Alec Burks with the 1 year, $6 million deal with the New York Knicks. So they have a guard.
It's actually somewhat clever because they could just trade him at the deadline and get a second round pick.
Yep, I think it's a good one. I think that they're making some okay moves there in New York now. Not biggest fan of the Obi Toppin signing, but whatever. Final one, Nick, in honor of the president himself, Garrett Temple with a $5 million deal to head to Chicago. Salute to the Prez and all you did for.
I'm happy for him because he got the money he missed out on the team option from the Nets, $5 million, and he's going to provide Chicago probably with some solid minutes. They really need a veteran out there, and he's going to do even more in the locker room with all the young guys. But Kory, what do you got? You got something?
Just on the Pacers front, the Pacers used the maximum value of their non-bird rights for Justin Holiday, so the Pacers still have their mid-level exception.
Yep.
Which is pretty crazy.
Very interesting. I'm sure as soon as we end this thing,
they might not use it though if they do the sign and trade for Gordon Hayward because then they'll be hard cap. So
I would expect not. Yeah.
Well, lads, I don't have much else to add, but
Okay.
I'm sure Fred Van Vliet
Is
will...
it calming down? Are we? Is everything quiet? It's too quiet now. It's too damn quiet now.
It'll start back up at like 1 a.m., but I think we're done on this one. We appreciate, again, everybody who checked out the first stream and the second stream. This has been awesome. We'll try to do them more, especially if we get as much interaction that we've been getting, because it's been great. And, Jack, what do you got?
At NetsHead11, Joe Harris posted his signing on Instagram. I need to check that out. I'm going to end my podcasting
Yeah, we need
day.
to get out of here before it gets rated R, X-rated, N17, whatever. Like I said, I appreciate everybody, especially you two, and big thanks, and check us out on all streaming platforms.